A very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the KTN News for KTN Newsdesk on this 14th day of November 2016. Always a pleasure to have you tuned in. We have a lot lined up for you on what's been happening in the country and beyond. My name is Akisa Wandera. Our sign language interpreter is Lensa Owino. Good afternoon. Now, Bernard Mushere, the auditor who unearthed the possible loss of money at the Health Ministry, has defended his report, saying it was professionally done. He says the questions he raised were not confined to the Ministry of Health, but that misappropriation of funds was rampant in government. He has dismissed allegations that he is working for the opposition, and here is part of what he told the members of the Senate Health Committee.
Maybe before you comment, Madam Chair, let him finish his point. The point you're getting is that you cannot procure unless there is money, according to the law.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Which is the other point? Which is the other point, or that's what you wanted to say?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
Very
say.
good. Madam Vice Chair.
In your internal auditing, if it occurs to you that there is some supplementary estimate that has been done and there are no forgers, what do you do in such situation? Because you should, if I'm the auditor, then I should be able to take a decision or alarm, notify, let people know what happened. So in your situation, what happened to the estimates of 350 million, which was fully expanded, and no payment vouchers?
I'm Chair, you see, when we were doing this audit, it's after the end of the financial year. And as I said, this was a compliance audit which you are informing the cabinet that these ones do not comply with the law. It is not only supposed to take action by then. When you inform the management, they can correct that in the future.
Very
so
well.
that in the future we should not go the same way.
Very well. Let's acknowledge the presence of Senator Leshore with us. He's here. Welcome. Now, yes, Senator Mwita.
Thank you, Chair. As an auditor, what are the red flags you noted with the companies that were paid from the supplementary estimates?
I did not see red flags in the companies, but the red flags you're talking about here is on the issue of the two consignments.
Very well.
Here you are, that you have this consignment which is being procured with global funds. And you're also procuring the same, and they are being warehoused in the same place. So purely this was to alert the cabinet secretary and the management that they look at this area, because that is our role. We cannot take in action apart from telling the management here, check this place, because it could be, it will happen this way. You know, purely that is what we are alerting.
All right, let's now speak to our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo, who's joining us from Parliament. Good afternoon, Patrick. Last week, we saw the CS for Health and the PS appear before that very committee, and all fingers pointed to the Auditor General. What was his explanation today before the Health Committee of the Senate?
Indeed, the auditor, the internal auditor, has defended his report. He says whatever he was focusing on were two critical thematic areas which, if not dealt with, then we might it might result in massive theft at government departments or ministries. So the internal auditor, focused on four thematic areas. Thus, through this particular internal audit report that was concessioned or commissioned by the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Cleopa Mailu. And indeed, he says that when he gave this particular report, he focused, he did expose the supplementary budgets, where he says that it is an issue where most money is stolen or misappropriated, because the supplementary budget comes at a time towards the tail end of the financial year, and what happens is that most of the time the IFMIS system is not followed, or even the procurement procedures or regulations are not followed. So he's told the Senate Committee on Health and also its counterpart in the National Assembly to look into this aspect of the supplementary budget. Remember, most of the time ministries or departments come up with supplementary budgets when at least the financial year comes to a close, claiming at times even billions of shillings to ensure that the year gets through. But most of the time is now the internal auditor says that these monies that are often approved by Parliament, most of the time the money is misappropriated. So he says he's questioned the Health Committee to look into that aspect very, very seriously. He's also raised concern about the diversion of funds. Remember, the maternity money was worth about 1 billion shillings was diverted into procurement of other nutritional staffs and other, also to fund the portable clinics. So he's questioned that, and he says that was irregularly done. He's also questioned the idea of the Cooperative Bank of Kenya being giving a letter, a promissory letter. He says this was against the law, because that money is not allowed unless it's only done through international transactions. So it is a thing that the auditor went through, and he told the committee that he was not comfortable when especially certain members of Parliament took it upon themselves to start hurling insults at him, claiming that he was working either for the opposition. He says, as far as he's concerned, that internal audit report never leaked from the audit office, the one that the media did expose. He says that he's done his investigations, and as far as he's concerned, that report that came to the media did not originate from the auditor's office. And two, he says that since the report came in, was exposed by the media, in fact, some forces have come out to, in fact, give more details than, in fact, the one that is at his disposal, especially like when it comes to the ownership of the various companies. He says his report did not detail the various owners of the particular companies. So this particular Senate committee was sitting this particular afternoon, and also before they wound out their session, they had a session with the National Quality Control Laboratory, where again it was said the head of that control laboratory said that he did discover an attempt to steal 18.2 million shillings from these the laboratory monies that were meant for purchase of chemicals and reagents. So he says that this signature was forged and by one of the staffers through forging a password of one of the deputy manager of the National Quality Control Laboratory, whose password was established without his knowledge to steal these 18.2 million shillings in questionable vouchers, which supply companies. About 8 companies are listed which benefited from these 18.2 million shillings, which money, according the National Quality Control Laboratory chief or boss says that it was fraudulently, it was a fraudulent pay.
Right, thank you very much. That's our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo, who will be definitely giving you more information about what was said in that health committee by the internal auditor in our subsequent bulletins. But moving on, the Kenya National Coordinating Committee of Public Servants in the country has come out to oppose a recent report by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on a job evaluation exercise, which they claim is shoddy. The unions comprising of the Union of Kenya Civil Servants, the Kenya County Government Workers Union and the Kenya University Staff Union, among others, insist that they were never involved in the evaluation exercise that has seen 5 new job groups created that will seek to harmonize salaries across all public servants. They now insist if a 21-day ultimatum issued to the government to commence dialogue is not met, they will consider paralyzing public service across all sectors in the country.
We support the strike call that our colleagues in KPDU and the Kenya National Union of Nurses have called. We will come out and support them. Should the government or any other listening authority does not come forward to address the concerns that we are raising, we will certainly go. And in any event, let Sarah Serem and her team know this. If she has not carried out, or whichever other areas of the public service that she hasn't carried out the job evaluation, let her take it from us that it is now that she must take in to ensure that she actually allows those unions and their members to participate in coming up with job evaluation. Lest we will all call our members and withdraw labor massively in this country.
The mandate of SRC has in the first place been misinterpreted, and there is what we call extrajudicial powers which are being exercised by this commission. And it has been pointed out from the onset. Parliament has pronounced itself on this. Trade unions have done this. Employers have also pronounced themselves on this. And it's unfortunate that in our country we have not taken steps to address this illegality and overstepping, as earlier been said, of the mandate without due regard to anything labor, anything relating to labor relations, no regard to it. It is labor relation dictatorship that has crept into or replaced what was called tripartism. It is the process of what we call tripartism is the three-party arrangement, government being the umpire, the two parties, the person who is selling his labor, and the person who wants to use this labor for production must sit at all times and negotiate, hammer out an agreement, so that it's acceptable to both parties. This spirit has been killed. Then what happens? Dictatorship from one source, particularly we are talking of unions in the public sector.
Kenyans are not happy, workers are not happy. It is not pleasing even before God when majority of workers are crying and mourning just because of the report that has been released by SRC. It is not representing the interest of workers. It is not articulating the issues that they need to be addressed. And this calls urgently for the stakeholders, the government, to engage the trade unions to avert the impending strike. We are not happy to see Kenyans suffering when there is an industrial action. But this can only be averted when the government come closely to reason together with trade unions to come up with a document that represents the interest of workers.
Our reporter Timothy Oteno attended that particular briefing and now joins us live from our city center studios with an update. Timothy, good afternoon. With a 21-day ultimatum, what exactly are the demands being made by these groups?
Well, basically, Akisa, these trade unionists are, of course, a collection of workers from the county governments, as well as university staff, as well as nurses unions, as well as those working in the commercial, food and allied sectors, want basically two things. One, that the job evaluation exercise report that was released by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to be withdrawn with immediate effect, because they are saying that this report did not factor in their input and they were not involved in the evaluation exercise, so they do not understand how this report is meant to help them if they were not actually involved in the formation of the report, and their opinion was not sought after by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And secondly, they want an inclusive sort of dialogue to be conducted between them, the relevant ministries in charge of their various sectors, as well as the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, so that they can come up with a consolidated coordinated and a unified report that actually represents the interests of the people whom they are, of course, speaking on their behalf, whom they say is over 150,000. So most of these trade unionists are saying if those two things are not done, then the country could be facing some very interesting times. They threaten, of course, to down their tools. They are in support of the strike notice issued by the doctors as well as the nurses in regards to this particular report. And they say that within the next couple of days, 21 days to be exact, if those two things, the withdrawal of that particular report and negotiations to commence, if that is not done by the relevant bodies, then possibly they also could down their tools, and we could perhaps witness one of the largest industrial actions this country has ever witnessed. But as it stands, none of those who spoke during that press conference expressed any sort of happiness or comfort in that report. They say they were not factored in, and they say that the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has really been insisting on conducting its business according to Article 230 of the Constitution, but they're also saying they are also being backed by the same Constitution under Article 41 that talks about labor relations and how each and every person or worker in this country is, of course, has the right of fair remuneration as well as good working conditions. So they are insisting on the policy of fair play and fair pay, and that is what they are saying that report does not really highlight, considering this report came out with 5 job groups from job group A that talks about the basic and least qualified persons and the basic workers, to job group E that talks about top executive and senior officials within various parastatals and of course, organizations within government. But one of the reasons that they were coming up with is they oppose the SRC's move because they're saying SRC's mandate should just be advisory and should not dictate the salaries that they are supposed to get, because they are not state officials. Rather, they insist that they are public servants, and the SRC has actually overstepped in its mandate by trying to dictate the frameworks of the salaries that they as public servants are expected to earn. Akisa.
Thank you very much, Timothy. That's our reporter, Timothy Otieno, joining us from our City Centre studios with details on some of the demands that these trade unions have, failure to which they have promised to down their tools in the next 21 days. Meanwhile, public hearings today kicked off in earnest as members from the private sector made their submissions on the proposed local content bill being spearheaded by Baringo Senator Gideon Moi. According to stakeholders, their submissions on the proposed local content and some of the key classes are touching on revenue sharing as well as provisions for employment and sourcing of materials from the locals. Here now is part of the sentiments raised earlier at the hearings that were held at the Senate County Assembly here in Nairobi.
We do believe that this is a very important bill in terms of facilitating the growth of the extractive sector. And in particular, I think one of the issues that we are particularly keen to see come out of this bill is that it should have a very clear emphasis in terms of collaboration between the county and national governments, because a lot of the resources that are actually the subject matter of this bill are actually in the counties. So there's a very clear need for collaboration between these two levels of government, but also the private sector, because obviously the private sector is the main player in terms of extraction of these natural resources. And then the other issue that we wanted to highlight, just in terms of an overall view, is that this bill should, of course, help to create a predictable investment climate that would then particularly support local enterprises, which stand to benefit out of the implementation of local content provisions.
The private sector has succeeded on and prevailed on being able to work with the market forces. Supply and demand when it comes to even services that are being offered by persons, even in the employment sector. And what we want to be able to submit, again, to this committee is that whereas it is, as I say, desirable to be able to have this, unlike government, which can actually prescribe job kills and the amounts to be offered as remuneration, for the private sector, if we were to include that, it would be to put the hand of
All right, and our reporter Abi Agina spoke to the Senate's Energy Committee Chairman Gideon Moi, who reassured investors and members of the public that submissions made to review the local content bill will be acted upon. Let's take a look at that interview.
Well, to get more perspectives into the local content bill public hearings, we're now joined by the chairman of the Energy Committee in Senate, and that is Honorable Gideon Moi. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Perhaps, what do you make of these inputs that we've been receiving in the course of these deliberations?
I'm very encouraged, and it's been a robust contribution by the public, and especially today was the professionals. So you've got old KEPSA, you've got the Oil and Gas Association, and other stakeholders have come today, and they've made their views known, and we're taking it very seriously. They've given us the memoranda, and it shows the seriousness that people have taken this bill, and saying how we can grow the extractive industry and have an excellent climate for the investors so that we harmonize the whole sector. But what's so important is the public participation and the publics to benefit, each and every Kenyan to benefit in one way or another from the extractive industries.
And lastly, I'm curious to find out what were some of the striking recommendations that were made by the participants that, as a committee, you'll be taking into serious consideration?
They made many, but what's important, which came out, is the climate. They want a seamless operation where there's no duplication in the bills, our bill and other bills which are out there. But what encouraged me is that everybody's positive, and everybody knows and sees the need to work harmoniously between the investors, the operators, the national government, the county government, and the people at large.
So what's the next stage after the hearings are done?
Okay, we're done today in Nairobi. We'll be moving now to Turkana, to Mombasa, to Western Province, specifically Kakamega, Nakuru County, Garissa, and pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution, but public participation and getting the views of Kenyans as a whole, and the people at home, at Mashinani. We want to get their views too on this bill.
All right. And maybe a parting shot in terms of how soon are we likely to see this bill being operationalized if you get consensus across the divide?
It's in the interest of all of us, and I think we built that. Hopefully, God willing, before we break off next year, to go and seek a fresh mandate from the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is Senator Gideon Moi, the chairman of the Energy Committee, who just giving us an update regarding the fate of this bill that is about to get more public participation across the counties, and it is a timely bill that will change the landscape when it comes to the matters to do with the mining industry. Reporting from Parliament, my name is Abi Agina.
Well, thanks, Abi, for that. And at this point, we'll take a short break. Don't go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN Newsdesk.